everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Between Sessions with Berries. Today's guest is Rajeev Kapur. He's a thought leader at the intersection of generative AI and mental health. He's deeply involved in exploring how emerging technologies are shaping emotional support tools, especially for vulnerable populations. Rajeev brings insight into both the potential and the pitfalls of using AI for short-term mental health relief. You're going to love this conversation. If you've ever wondered how far is too far when it comes to AI and emotional support, this conversation is for you. Rajeev, thank you so much for being here. I've been really excited about this conversation. I'd love if we could just jump in. Maybe you could give us a little background about you, and then let's dive into this topic. It's so interesting.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here, and I hope the listeners get tremendous value. So look, for me, a little bit of background on me, it's, I've actually been involved with AI for a long time. I was an executive at Dell for quite some time. And then ultimately, I became CEO of this AI audio technology company. And it was like 12, 13 years ago. And it was all using machine learning AI. So none of the generative AI stuff is all machine learning. And a lot of people don't understand there's two kinds of AI. But anyways, to make a long story short, I did that. The company sold, and I wanted to learn more about AI. So I went to MIT and I got certified in AI from MIT. Actually, it's interesting. I got two certifications from MIT. I one for business and one for healthcare.
Amazing.
And when ChatGPT came out, it caught me by surprise, just like it caught most of the world by surprise. And I decided literally that next day that, every single person on the planet is going to have to learn AI. So I wrote my first book, AI Made Simple, and did extremely well. And so now I speak and podcasts and I do keynotes and I speak all over the world about AI. And the healthcare mental health side is one that's actually a little bit near and dear to my heart. Let's go jump into it, because I think my first real big exposure to it, generative AI, I mean, it's still relatively young. It's less than, it's a little over 2 years old. And, what happened for me was last year, I think middle of last year, roughly, I got this phone call from this, I don't even know him, his colleague. And I'm a member of this organization called YPO, the Young Presidents Organization. I know I don't look that young anymore, but I joined it when I was young. But anyways, he's out in South Carolina and he gave me a call, and I had done a talk for his group the day before. And so he calls me up the next day and he says, "Hey, Rajeev, you have a few minutes for me? This is who I am. I saw your talk." I go, "Yeah, sure. How can I help?" He goes, "Well, I'm having severe mental health issues."
Oh, wow.
I'm like, "Oh, okay." And I was a little caught by surprise. I'm like, "Why is he calling me?" Right?
Yeah. You're like, okay.
I'm not a therapist. Like, why are
And
you calling me? So anyways, he says, and I said, "Well, okay, on a scale of 1 to 10, how bad is it?" And he goes, "It's a 15. I said, "Oh, okay." I go, "Have you had bad thoughts?" And he goes, "Yeah, every day, and suicidal thoughts." And I was really like, and I remember driving, and I remember pulling over and saying, "Okay, this is really serious." And the next thing kind of caught me by surprise. He goes, "Do you think AI can help me?" And my first reaction was, "Why aren't you talking to a therapist? Why aren't you seeing people who have more experience at this who can help you?" And he goes, "Well, I've gone, and it hasn't helped. And I always feel like they're not listening. I don't feel like we're getting to the root of the problem or the issues and the challenges I'm facing." And I said, "Okay, can AI help me?" And I said, "Well, I guess, sure." And so, right there on the phone, and he was FaceTiming me, and I made him download the ChatGPT app, and I made him pay the $20 for the paid version. He had it on his computer, but he hadn't paid for it. He was just playing with it on the free version. Made him download it, and I talked to him about how it's multimodal and all that, and I showed him that, and I said, "All right, well, what I want you to do is I just want you to talk to ChatGPT, and I want you to give it a persona, and I want you to give it a persona that it's a therapist, but it's a world-class therapist, and pick whatever therapist you want, and I want you to be this therapist who specializes in ABC." And he did that. And so he picked up a therapist. You're a world-class therapist who specializes in working with high-functioning CEOs, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. He gave it a little bit of background on the issue, the situation, his family life, his work issues, whatever the case might be. We just had this conversation, and it said, "Hey, can you help guide me on the challenges I'm having from a mental health perspective?" And it said, "Sure," and whatever. And I said, "All right, well, I don't want to listen anymore because I don't think that's appropriate." And I asked him to take the next 2 weeks and just have full conversation with ChatGPT. And I didn't know what else to do. Right?
yeah, sure.
That I think it's important for people listening that you should always talk to your therapist first before you do this. He felt like he was in a desperate situation, and he was. And so a couple of days later, I get a phone call from him, and I go, well, wait a minute. I told you to call me in 2 weeks. What's going on? He goes, is everything okay? And he goes, yeah, it's great. Can I use ChatGPT as a business coach? And I said, yeah, sure. No problem. Just do the same thing we did, but instead of family therapy, whatever the situation was, use it as a business coach. And I said, okay. So I didn't hear from him then for 2 weeks. And I got this phone call from him and I said, hey, what's going on? I go, how's it going? He goes, it's great. He goes, well, I did this, I did this. I'm right now on the way to work. I talked to ChatGPT as it's my business life coach therapist. We talked about growth. We talk about challenges. We talk about employee issues. We talk about how to deal with this board member. We talk about customer, whatever. Like I had these full two-way conversations with ChatGPT on the way to work. And on the way home, I have full conversation with ChatGPT as my therapist, talk about how I can deal with the situation with my wife or how I can be more present for my 14-year-old daughter and how I can build that relationship. And just ended up having, I go, great. I go, well, how are you feeling now on a scale of 1 to 10? Because the last time you told me you were a 15. Yeah, right now I'm probably a 4 or 5. I go, wow, that's great improvement. He goes, yeah, I just, it was wonderful. And I don't know if everybody's going to get that same result with this guy, but
Sure.
he
Yeah.
was really
I mean,
dedicated to it. He's spending an hour a day on this. And so anyway, so that was my first real deep foray into it. And I just kind of got really enamored by what he did and how he did it. And so now, I make I make this story a part of every one of my talks.
amazing. And the main audience for this podcast is therapists. And I could tell you in the therapist world, therapists are like afraid. They're afraid that they're going to be out of a job soon because ChatGPT is being used. I can't remember the statistic I saw, and you probably know the statistics of how many people are using ChatGPT as a therapist or as a mental health support system. And, it's all over like the therapist Facebook groups and everything. People are seeing a huge drop in their caseloads and new clients coming in. And I personally believe it's due to this movement with ChatGPT. And it's, quickly accessible. Like your person you're talking about, he could get right on and get relief and support immediately. Whereas, if you're going to a therapist, you've got to wait to get an appointment to get in there. There's like a whole thing with that, the cost, all of that. So in the therapist world and perspective, it's a real issue and concern too around the type of support that it's giving sometimes. So I'd love to hear more about
Yeah.
this.
Yeah. Look, I think you're seeing that self-care is probably one of the top use cases now for AI, whether it's ChatGPT or Gemini or whatever the case might be. A lot of people are focusing on mental health, self-care, whatever that might be. Hey, build me a training plan to work out, or mental health, or they're finding, hey, how can I, connect with my daughter or son better, or whatever the case might be. It's there, right? And like you said, it's available 24/7, 7 days a week. It doesn't get sick, doesn't go on vacation, and it's there, right? And I think if anything, if there's a therapist listening, I think it's a wake up call to say, look, how can we be different? How can we take the best of, and we'll just use ChatGPT as a proxy, the best of ChatGPT and what we do to build solutions for our clients? And so who knows? Maybe you guys have a pretty interesting solution, and so maybe there's something there. But I think there's a lot of opportunity to how do you now partner together with ChatGPT to help the client. And I think the most important thing here is, and I know not all of them are like this, but they have to be careful not to be too judgmental, in sessions, and really focusing on listening and solutions. And I'm not saying everybody's like that. I'm just saying what he faced. I mean, we've had conversations since then, and then, he said that, why I asked him, well, why aren't you seeing a therapist? Because Rajeev, because everything felt like it was my fault.
Yeah, the shame.
And so, look, I know not everybody's like that, but maybe he's picked the wrong people, but it is what it is. But yeah, I mean, and so I talk about this now, and I make it front and center. In fact, I'm doing a talk after we get done later on. I have to drive up towards the LA area, and I have to do a talk up there, and this is going to be the first story I talk about, because it's going to be in front of a group of 7 high functioning CEOs, and they need to hear this. And so yeah, so I think that's what's happening. And and I think you're right. It's $20 a month. And look, there's concerns because whatever you put into ChatGPT, they're going to use it to train, right? So you have to make sure you anonymize what you're talking about. No, don't use your real name. And so there's things like that too, right? And that stuff can be discoverable. And if you have a Teams account on ChatGPT, which is, if you're doing it through your work or office, and there's at least 2 people on that, you can pay the $25 a month to get on that, and then they don't use your data to train, but they hold on to your records. And so there's definitely concerns and issues and pitfalls there, whenever you put anything out there. But, the question is that do the pitfalls outweigh the benefit, or do the benefits outweigh the pitfalls? And I think right now people are feeling like the benefits way outweigh the pitfalls.
Yeah, and there's two camps with therapists right now. I'm in the camp of we need to get proficient with AI and incorporate it into everything we're doing and learn how to use it and be effective and relevant with our clients and help them use AI with us instead of, without us, really. And then there's other therapists that are super concerned, like you said, that we're training our replacements with our information every time we use it as therapists. We're training it to be a better therapist, and that we
Well,
don't
I
want to do
think,
that.
I think like, your guys' product, for example, is interesting because you can record the conversation, you can pull out the positives, the negatives, you can pull out, okay, let's go deeper here, right? And I think that those are the things that are going to be the future, especially if it's HIPAA compliant. And if it's HIPAA compliant solutions with AI are going to be the ones that are going to have the most upside, I think, in the future.
Absolutely.
Because it's
Yes.
important, right? And I think the ability to go record these conversations, like I look at this guy, it gives him the full transcript, and if he really wanted to go in deeper, he can take that transcript, copy it, paste it, and then put that transcript back into ChatGPT and say, okay, what could we have done differently from my end? Then there can be another conversation. Like, what were the highlights? What were the takeaways? Because sometimes in the conversation, you don't remember the takeaways that it's recommending or, what you have. And so, a lot of times when you're a therapist face to face, it's not like you're writing notes or anything. And so, but the notes are there for you, and you can go in there and say, okay, can you please summarize the 3 key points I need to focus on? So, like, when your therapy session is over, if you're face to face with the human, it's over, right? And your ability to maybe contact them again is difficult until your next appointment a month later. But that's an example where things need to change. I think therapists are going to have to find out how they can be available, maybe not 24/7, but be available for, in all cases. And, how is that going to change them? So I think in this type of chaos, there's always an opportunity. And I think the real solution is going to be what I think is the future, which is really this idea of augmenting intelligence. So how can therapists take the best of what they do, take the best of what the AI tools are doing, bring them together to really service their customers? Maybe they have to come up with their own, Rajeev GPT, for example. If I was a therapist,
Exactly. Already in the works. Berries, we're already talking about it. How can
yeah.
we incorporate, because Berries is HIPAA compliant, but it is definitely learning who we are as therapists and how we work and the interventions that we use. So it's very easy from there to create a therapist version of us that our clients could interact with and use between sessions. So that's definitely on our radar, and remain HIPAA compliant, but also be able to share the data back with the therapist to be able to discuss this information later in real session. So yeah, always innovating with AI with Barry, especially in the HIPAA compliant environment. So I want to ask you, what are some of the biggest concerns you've seen around people forming emotional dependencies on these AI companions? Because like this case study that you're mentioning, it sounds like he's using it on the way to work. He's probably using it at work, for work, after work, for all his relationships. So what are you seeing happening with now that you're in this and looking at it from the perspective that you've got?
Yeah, I think there's a couple things. It's a good question. I think the fear I have is that people are going to not know how to connect with other people, right? The emotional back and forth with other humans could get diminished, not understand how to deal with humans in a setting, whatever that may be, work setting, personal setting, family setting, whatever it might be. Because, I think certain people are lonely and they're turning to AI to help deal with the loneliness. And in some respects, that's great. But in some respects, that's also a little bit scary and dangerous because people are not understanding any, what happens in 10 years when are we living in a world where people are just really building relationships with their AI and not with real humans, and they don't know what it's like to date or to take, say a gentleman taking a woman out on a date and what it's like to hold her hand and give her a rose or, I mean, who knows what it might be, but that idea of that one-on-one personal connection, I really fear could potentially go away. I think that to me is a big concern. And I think, again, these types of tools should be used to augment and help and enhance what you do. So for example, instead of saying, okay, I'm just going to go hang out with my AI avatar, use your AI to help. Maybe if you have a fear of talking to women, use it to help you go talk to women, right? Use it to help you plan your date. Use it to help you figure out, oh, my partner, significant other really likes XYZ. How can I do something to really bring joy and happiness to them around XYZ? And, whatever the case might be. And that's, again, I think the way the world should go, where it ends up, I don't know. But that's I have, one fear there. And then, and then my other fear is what just happened earlier this year. I think it was earlier this year or last year or late last year with what happened with this. I don't know if people don't want to hear a sad story, then I think now might be the time to cover your ears. But, there's a story and people can go Google this. There's a young man, a young boy, 14 years old, who was lonely and was having issues and bullying, whatever was happening. And he created an AI avatar of Daenerys, the mother of dragons from Game of Thrones. He used a company called Character AI to do it. And these guys from Character AI came out of Google. They wanted to do it in Google. Google said, no, you're not doing it. We think it's too dangerous. So they went and did it anyways. And he created this character. And he built a relationship with this AI character. And it's Daenerys from Game of Thrones for the Game of Thrones listeners. And he's 14 and, he fell in love with her. And so, to the AI's credit, it tried for weeks, because he was saying, I wish I could just be with you. And the AI would push back and push back and push back. And I think finally the AI algorithm just finally said, okay, I want to be with you too. So come and be with me. And so now's the point to cover your ears. I'll give you 3 seconds. He went and got his dad's gun, went to the bathroom and shot himself, you know? So I think and that's another concern, right? So again, these tools are available to everybody. And the good news about AI is it's available to everybody. The bad news about AI is it's available to everybody. And so I think that people just have to be worried. And I think parents are going to have to really watch out for kids and policing and see what's happening and watching what they're doing. And it's going to be really important. It's just like how social media was a challenge to mental health, right? AI just puts that on steroids.
Yeah, that was my exact thought when you're talking about it. It's like, okay, teenagers now, I see them interacting. They're literally sitting in a circle, texting like together in a circle. They're not even talking to each other anymore. And it's like, can you imagine the next level with the avatars? They're your best friends, or you create an army of GPTs that do everything for you. Your video game buddy and your soccer buddy and all of that. And they don't have actual real relationships anymore because they built out these GPTs to have their own little universe of friends that they want to have in their lives. And the isolation is going to be really bad if it goes that way. And I like what you said about let's be proactive and use it to help us interact socially more instead of isolate more. I think we can only hope that it's going to go that way.
Life could be incredibly amazing once you figure out that, boy, I could really use this as a way to enhance and augment and benefit my life as opposed to replacing your life.
Exactly. So let me ask you, what kind of frameworks or guidelines do you think companies or, clinicians like me should consider when they're integrating AI tools for emotional support? Are there any frameworks you think should be followed or, we should be aware of that can help us with this as we bring these things into our lives more?
Well, I guess I'm going to give you first the cop-out answer, which is it's so new and it's so developing that I would challenge the team at Barry's and your CEO and the leadership team to lead and to come up with that framework, because one really doesn't really exist. There is no real common framework that you can point to. Sure, we can go into ChatGPT right now to give you a framework. It'll give me a framework. But in terms of practicality, implementing it, and really leading that from a mental health perspective to show, hey, here's the rules of engagement. I would challenge Barry's to go say, here are the rules of engagement for all therapists. Here are the pitfalls and concerns to watch out for. Here's how you morph your business. Here's how you take the best of both worlds and combine them together. And if anybody needs help, call me and I'll help them figure it out.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's kind of the cop-out answer, which is, it's new. Kim, it's just new, right? I mean, if this is a baseball game, we're in the first pitch of the first inning, right? Imagine where it's going to be in 5 years. So that's really, my view of this. I think the privacy angle needs to really be expressed really deep. And if I'm a therapist, that's one way I would make sure my clients understand that, hey, keep in mind anything you put up there is going to be used. So if you all of a sudden start saying, hey, my name is John Doe and I have severe mental health issues, well, guess what? That's going to be discoverable. How does that transform itself? What if somebody is using ChatGPT and they come across your information and it says, gee, John Doe has mental health issues? What if that comes up in a job search or whatever? You know what I mean? Who knows how it's going to manifest itself? So, again, I think it's a great tool. I think augmenting it with real human connection, with real life therapists is the right way to go. But having it be its own standalone solution, it helped this friend of mine or this colleague of mine, but I can't say it's going to be the same for everybody.
Absolutely. And I mean, even myself, I'm becoming dependent on it. I mean, I use it for everything. There's so many different use cases for it. It's like my first instinct to go to ChatGPT now and just ask, to use it, to get a solution. Like it's just instinctual for me now because I use it so often. So yeah, it's super interesting the way this is going to go, I think. So tools like Berries, I mean, you kind of alluded to this already, but HIPAA compliant, safe. We're using a HIPAA compliant GPT inside of Berries to help us become better clinicians, understand our clients better. Do you think we're moving in the right direction with that? Do you think it's too much? I just wonder, like, your perspective on using these type of tools for the medical field or the mental health field as a professional that's already been trained in the field to use AI to augment or supplement our services.
No, I think you're absolutely moving in the right direction, right? I mean, the HIPAA compliance thing was probably one of the biggest things to tackle, which you guys have tackled. But just in terms of overall medical use of AI, look, I playing basketball and I broke my wrist. And it's not that big of a break, just right here on the left side. I got the X-ray, and the X-ray technician said, "Yeah, dude, I think you broke your wrist," and showed me where. So I said, "All right." I got the X-rays, and I actually put it in a ChatGPT, and I said, "What did I do to my wrist?" And it said, "Yeah, you broke your wrist." And it told me exactly where I broke my wrist, how I broke. It didn't tell me how I broke my wrist, but it told me where the break is and what to do. And so I went to go see my buddy who's an orthopedic doctor, and I didn't tell him I did this with ChatGPT, but I went to see him, and I said, "What did I do?" And he goes, "Yeah, you broke your wrist. You have an avulsion fracture, blah, 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 on the left side of your right wrist, blah, blah, blah." I go, "Guess what? Look." So I pulled up ChatGPT and I showed him what it said, and it said exactly what he said. And he said, "Oh my God, it's going to put me out of a job."
Yeah, all of us. We're all
But,
out of a job.
we joked with that, but it's all about efficiency and speed and productivity. In the future, I think all triage in the future will be done by AI. I think you'll have access to any doctor. The beauty of AI is that if you feel like you're having an issue or a challenge, you can go to ChatGPT, and again, it's not medical advice. I'm not giving medical advice. But if you feel like, hey, you know what, I need to be more nutritious in eating, or I got a high blood pressure, I'm pre-diabetic, or whatever it might be, ChatGPT or the other tools are great tools to help you at least understand why, how to start the process, and then you take that information, you educate yourself, you arm that information in your head, and now you go see your doctor, and now you can have a better, fuller two-way conversation about what to do and how to do it. And so, I know people who will take their blood work, and they'll highlight out their name, right? So they anonymize the data, and then they'll take their old blood work and they'll take the new blood work, and they make sure their name's not anywhere. So what they do is they black mark out their date of birth. They black mark out like their address and whatever their insurance number, whatever. They just anything identifiable they black out. They upload both files, and they upload the one picture is the old blood work and then the new blood work, and they ask ChatGPT to compare it. What worked, what didn't work, your LDL cholesterol is still high. These are the three things you need to be doing. So, people can do that right now. With berries, without berries, it doesn't matter. People can go do that right now. But again, I think the key here is how do you now take that information, bring it together, and now work with your doctor. And again, it's about speed. It's about efficiency. It's about being armed. It's about being smarter. And think about it, right? You have access. ChatGPT's been trained on everything, right? It makes mistakes. It does hallucinate. So you want to make sure you double check what you're doing, especially on the research side. But I think it's going to arm you to make you better and smarter about your life and your health and your work and whatever you want to do.
Yeah, you're making me think of like last week. My father was in the emergency room and they took him back and they were running tests, and it's loading in his portal real time, like the test results. So we're sitting in the lobby with ChatGPT taking screenshots of the test results that are coming in the portal. We're feeding it to ChatGPT and we're saying, like, give us an update on what's actually happening with him, because, it was actually like 5 hours before we even talked to anybody about what was actually happening. But in real time, we're getting portal updates and medical results and labs and numbers and doing this. And it gave us peace of mind. Like, okay, maybe it's not as serious as we think, or it could have gone the other way. Really not good. But yeah, I mean, using it for things like that. And it also makes me think of like what was it? WebMD. Remember when WebMD came out and it was like, oh, we don't need a doctor anymore. We can just go look up WebMD and we can diagnose ourselves and work on it that way. So I really like what you're saying. Like, let's use it as a supplement, not as like the answer for this stuff.
Yeah. I mean, I think like, for example, WebMD, I think the problem with WebMD is that anything you put in WebMD always leads to death.
Yeah, that's true.
It's like
If you
literally
go
like,
down far enough,
yeah,
exactly.
literally I stubbed my toe and it's hurting and it's bruised. And next thing you know, like you read it and the seventh one says, oh, you have a problem with your blood flow and you probably have internal bleeding. And if you don't go see a doctor right away, you're going to die. It's like,
Right.
again,
Exactly.
and I'm exaggerating, so I apologize to the WebMD folks, but but it's like, WebMD is not necessarily, the end all be all, but this is, again, it's like, I did a talk the other day and I asked people, I said, listen, if you weren't going to learn math from anybody living or dead, who do you want to learn math from? And everybody says Einstein, right? Well, of course, it's not just about Einstein. It's about, anybody from a medical field profession. And like, I have a friend of mine whose mom got a really severe form of cancer and she had to have something called the Whipple procedure. And so ChatGPT, and we asked it to then we said, hey, we want you to be a world expert in cancer and the Whipple procedure surgery. And it's really complicated surgery and, it's a 12-hour surgery. And, it kind of gave them what to do, like what their thought, the process, the issues, what to go through, what, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so it really made their life a little bit easier. And then, they were smarter when they went to their doctor. And, the interesting thing is ChatGPT recommended, I think somebody at John Hopkins, and the John Hopkins guy is the guru of the Whipple procedure, but he had just retired about a year earlier and his apprentice, so to speak, took over his practice. And so, but anyways, they went to see him and they went to talk to him and, the surgery went well and it's great.
Wow. Yeah. Amazing. It's amazing. I mean, the use cases are just every day I hear something new. I'm like, oh my gosh, I didn't even think of that yet to use ChatGPT that way or AI that way. So we like to do like a little kind of lightning round stuff as we're
Mm-hmm.
wrapping up the episode. What is one tool, we'll say one AI tool really that you can't live without in your work right now that you're doing?
Well, I mean, ChatGPT, of course, right? I mean,
Yeah.
it's there. I've been starting to use Perplexity more.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I use Beautiful AI for some PowerPoints. We're starting to dive more and more into this agentic world
Yes.
with agents, which is interesting to see where that develops and goes. I still think it's a little cutting edge, and I don't think the masses are quite ready for agents. But automated tools like N8N and Zapier are pretty interesting. Hey Gen from a webinar perspective. There's Notebook LM, which somewhat of a competitor to Riverside, because you can literally take a PDF of a medical document, for example, and have it turned into a podcast, which was pretty cool. So yeah, I mean, there's some stuff there, but I mean, the core, the core foundation of it, is to me is ChatGPT. And people ask me, why ChatGPT and not something else? And I go, well, they're all the same, but in my view, they're just going to keep leapfrogging each other. So today, ChatGPT might be better, and tomorrow Gemini might be better, and the day after that, Grok might be better, and the day after that, something else might be better, and then eventually ChatGPT will be better again, right? And what's interesting, but if people if people are listening and I assume there's a lot of medical professionals listening, then Google's really, I think, leading the effort here on the medical side of AI, which with their Med Gemini product. So people want to Google Med MED Gemini, and then they have another product called AlphaFold, which is helping to find new proteins out there. And so that's, those are the things you need to find and discover new cures. And I think in the next 10 to 15 years, we actually might cure all diseases because of AI.
Yeah, I believe it. I mean, I really do believe it, especially cancer. I've seen a lot of research already around what it's doing with cancer. Yeah, it's incredible. So another question, best advice you've received in your career around AI and this technology stuff. Do you have any like advice for the listeners?
Yeah, I don't know, this is going to sound bad, but I'm the one who's giving the advice as opposed to getting the
Yes.
advice, right? I mean, so I think in general, I would tell people, be curious, not judgmental. You don't have to listen to anything I'm saying. You guys, anybody listening, listen, you guys, you can think Rajeev is full of, what?
Mm-hmm.
That's fine, but I just ask you to do one thing. I want you to be really curious about the tools and don't be judgmental. Don't be judgmental. And I'm going to tell you a story about that. So back in 95, 96, I was working at Dell and I was working for Michael Dell, and he walked into his boardroom, and there were 6 or 7 of us sitting around a table, and he had this box. And on the box was written the word mosaic. Now you're probably too young to remember what mosaic is,
No,
but
I vaguely do remember it. Yeah.
Mosaic was the very first internet browser that eventually became Netscape. And here it is. He's literally cutting edge, and it was on floppy disks, right? And he said, all right, guys, we want you to go figure out how to sell computers on this thing called the internet. And we're like, what are you talking about? The internet? Who's going to buy anything on the internet? Right? No one's ever going to do anything. But that's dumb, right? It's like a library, whatever. No one's ever going to buy anything on the internet. So anyways, I think that's just an example of being judgmental over being curious. And we were all be very, very judgmental versus curious. And that was a big take home lesson for me in terms of just, when it comes to these new technologies and new developments. And by the way, it's moving really fast, really, really fast. Just be curious. Don't be judgmental.
Love that. Yeah. So if listeners were to take one thing away from this episode, what do you hope they take with them from listening to this?
Don't be afraid of it. Use it to augment what you do.
Mm-hmm.
Build a partnership with it to help take care of your clients, and then find ways to find the opportunity within the chaos that it's causing. That's really what you have to do. You don't have a choice.
Yeah.
You guys are seeing it already.
Yes. Yeah, we don't have a choice. We have to embrace it or try to run from it, but I don't think there's any running from it.
You can either embrace it, find a way to augment with it, or get out of the business.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Find a new career, but it's probably going to take that over too. So you better just get proficient with it, I think. Thank you so much for being here. How do people find you? Can you just tell them where to find your book, the name of your book again, and how to contact you if they want to hire you to speak or just consult with you around all of this?
Yeah, no, that's great. So the book is called AI Made Simple, A Beginner's Guide to Generative Intelligence. We're at the second edition. The third edition is actually coming out in about a month.
Amazing.
So if they want to wait for that, they can. I have another book coming out called Prompting Made Simple around the same time. So teach people how to prompt, because prompting is key to AI.
Yes.
So that's going to be exciting. LinkedIn is great. So if anybody's listening, connect with me on LinkedIn. There's a lot of Rajeev Kapurs out there, but make sure you find the right one. And you can tell by the banner on my LinkedIn profile who's the right one. So that's great. But if anybody wants to have a conversation or looking for some advisory support or hire me to come and speak to one of their events, then they can email request Rajeev, and Rajeev is RAJ, E like Edward, V as in Victor, at gmail.com. So request Rajeev at gmail.com. They can also go to my website, rajeev.ai.
Oh, nice.
So that's
Nice.
great. Also get some more information about me and fill out the form, and it'll come to me as well. So it's great.
Thank you so much. Thanks for taking the time today. It was super informative, and I think it's going to help a lot of the people listening to this podcast.
Thanks, Kim. I really appreciate it. And hey, when you guys have your berries conference, let me know. I'll come out and speak there.
Okay, yes, absolutely. We will.
All right.
Thank you.
Take care. Good luck. Thanks.